This is a podcast presented by
Hard to Find Media.
Subscribe to Hard to Find Media on youtube.com/Hard to Find Media Network. This shit is free. Share it. Blast it.
Whatever it is, I can handle it.
You're the one always telling me I need to find my destiny. Well, one thing's for certain, it's not here in Kansas.
You saved my life.
He's a rather extraordinary young man. Don't you think?
Hello and welcome to Smallville Freaks, a podcast 15 years too late. I'm your host, Mike Pelly, joined by my co-host, Jason Lamb. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. We are back.
Yeah.
We're back for another episode.
This is our second episode. Hopefully it's not the sophomore slump. Sorry, I got confused with with the Granddaddy album. But
yeah.
yeah, sophomore slump,
Sophomore,
which is, every second book, movie, whatever.
Yeah.
Usually sucks.
It's another episode of this podcast, and we it's kind of daunting taking this project on because we know what we're in store for, having seen every episode of this show for 10 seasons, each season consisting of like 22 episodes. But
so Pelly,
yeah,
remind us again, what are the segments we're doing?
All right, so the segments that we're doing here for this show is we're going to just give an overview of what we gathered from the viewing, and I'm going to kind of spearhead the drama segment and talk about the juicy CW shit. This is pre-CW. This is the WB channel, at least when I saw this show, it was called WB. We're going to talk about all the drama stuff, and then we're going to talk drinking game. We're going to talk about all the stuff that will get you wasted watching the show, and finally, kind of round it out with the Geek Lore segment and the Crew Spotlight, which is very exciting.
All right.
So let's dive in. This episode is called Metamorphosis. Bugs, dude.
Yeah, not Kafka, but bugs.
Just bugs galore. This episode, I remember specifically the writers of Smallville actually publicly apologized for this episode.
Why?
Well, this was after the pilot was such a huge success, and within the week that the pilot aired and this episode aired, the writers came out and apologized for this episode. Because they apparently, and I'll have to look it up. I mean, I didn't look it up to see what they said verbatim, but from what I remember, they were like, this is not the direction we wanted to go. And I think that what they were talking about was Freak of the Week, X-Files style, which in my opinion, fucking yes to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes to the X-Files.
It's the first episode that sets off that trend,
right,
for many seasons.
Even though the pilot episode did have Electricity Man, but from 1989, but I think the first episode had a lot more all this potential to go anywhere, really.
Right.
But here we are with Bugman.
Bugman Greg.
Greg.
Never forget Greg.
Fucking Greg.
The villain of this episode was played by Chad Dinella.
That's his name?
Yeah. In real life.
In real life.
And
he's played Greg, the bug.
Yeah, played Greg, the Bugman, the Bug Boy. And he was on X-Files, Final Destination, most recently like Blind Spot and Lost. So we've seen this dude in a ton of things. Yeah, he was on Lost.
What did he do in Lost?
Dude, I can't remember. I remember his face.
He does have kind of a distinct... But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I think he might have also... No, it was just X-Files. I thought he was in Millennium, but...
So, okay, question about Greg the Bugman. He does this thing at the so he gets bugged at the beginning of the movie by a mixture of meteor rock, which is what we know as kryptonite, It's what Lana's necklace is made of. It's what weakens Clark. We all know that from Superman mythology. But in this episode, the guy is driving his bug. Get it?
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
He's driving his Volkswagen bug.
Oh, man.
Full of bugs. And so he's driving and really erratically and for no reason. I don't know why he's in such a hurry. But there is kryptonite in his car. And like he crashes into a tree or whatever. And then the bees that he has in his car like turn him into a bug man.
Well, they were like kryptonite infused bugs. I don't know if they ever really explained like how they got infused. He just had
They were just in the same confined space.
these like fireflies and
and
cockroaches.
there's a lot of that in this show.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like Freak of the Weeks are the freak because they were in a space where they were with something weird or like bugs and not that bugs are weird, but they were in this space with bugs and kryptonite, and it made them into a superhuman thing.
So in this, the kryptonite infused bugs turned him into our villain, Bug Boy. I thought that his transformation scene was very reminiscent of an X-Files episode. I think it was called Darkness.
Very X-Files, yeah.
It was called Darkness Falls, and it was about these little green bugs that glue in the they would glow in the dark.
Yeah.
And they would sort of hide in shadows.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
it's so X-Files.
And then again, with like Mark Snow's music, it just it seems like an X-Files episode.
Absolutely.
More than a Superman episode.
And that Mark Snow music is just drives it home. But another thing I wanted to bring up before we go on to the drama segment is so there's this part where and we're assuming you've watched the episode because we're just kind of touching on certain points. So if you haven't watched the episode, go fucking watch it.
Yeah, you're recapping it with us.
Yeah. There is a part where Chloe and Clark and Pete all decide to go to Greg's house and see what's going on, right? And
Greg, what's going on?
Not only do they find Greg's mother's corpse, by the way, this is an honorable mention. Before Greg kills his mom, it seems so incestuous.
Oh yeah, it's so dirty.
It is so disgusting that I can't think of anything else I've seen on a CW show.
Yeah, it's probably the most sexual son-on-mom interaction we've seen in television.
Yes, even though it means that he's an insect and he is like gonna.
He's like predatory.
Predatory, exactly.
But,
he says the thing. He's just like, they murder their mothers, whatever. Anyway, Chloe, Clark, and Pete, they all go into his house and they're looking around. They find the dead mom. But the second the dead mom comes out of the closet, when Clark finds it, the first thing he says is, Lana!
Not even, I mean, like, okay, yeah, I know.
They saw the Lana shrine. So that's probably why Clark said it. But it's at the same time, I feel like they all just left the mom's corpse and went to go like rescue Lana, and nobody's calling the cops that there's like this corpse in the fucking house.
Right.
Oh my god.
Oh, which segues in an opportunity to talk about Gabrielle Rose, who plays Greg's mom.
Yeah.
And she's also a seasoned veteran of genre television in Canada, shot in Vancouver.
Yeah.
She's been on Fringe and Continuum,
a lot of stuff.
X-Files, Millennium, Eureka, Stargate, Battlestar Galactica, and James Cameron's Dark Angel.
Ooh,
which I don't know if that was shot there,
Angel.
but she's been in a ton of things you would recognize her in. Just kind of prolific as far as like Canadian sci-fi.
And that makes a lot of sense because this was a show in 2001 that was just like using a lot of the resources to make this show a thing were from most of those shows.
Right. But what's interesting for somebody who's been in like so many roles, she was only in this episode for like less than 5 minutes. Maybe like
Yeah.
less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's not a long.
And then, her
Stay.
son gives her creepy looks and such. So,
Ugh.
anyway, moving on.
Hey, mom. he makes so many of these fucked up noises, and
Right.
I mean, I get it. He's an insect, but it's just
disgusting.
like the actor himself. At one point, before he kills his mom, and all the bees come out of his face, he looks like he's going to throw up on his mother. Like, hey, mom, look what I'm gonna do.
But that's eventually what he does, right? Because he like barfs like spider web all over him.
It's so disgusting. All right, so let's go into the drama stuff. Now, this is the real. This is my favorite part of the show because this is like where I feel like Smallville connects itself to people that aren't into Superman and more into that sort of like drama CW OC type stuff, but still reeling in those like geeks that watch the show into like this type of drama.
Right.
And Smallville does it so well. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right into that. The first thing is, so Greg, the bug boy, he has this like insane infatuation with Lana, much like Clark does. But since Greg turned into a bug, he kind of has this like real sort of, I can get whatever I want type of attitude, and like at the fair when he sees Lana, he's just like, oh yeah, like, do you want to go like study with me? You don't want to be with your boyfriend Whitney. You don't want to do that. He does not talk like that, but but that's basically what it is. So there's this like thing with Greg, right? Then there's the thing with Clark, where Clark in this episode is super protective of Lana. Like, it just immediately apparent. This is episode 2 of season 1, and he's like already just like, Lana, I gotta go protect her.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
But he almost feels like he has like an ownership over her.
It's
a super weird.
It's so quick and fast, and like the show doesn't build up to. I mean, like, I get in the pilot episode, it really kind of showed you that he's always longed for Lana, but like, out of nowhere, he decides that he's going to start protecting her with his powers.
Well, in our last podcast, we talked about how Clark was a super creep who was spying on Lana with his like telescope in his barn, right? So this episode,
Lana's into it.
Starts where the last one ends, where we think like,
Which
oh my
is
god,
cool.
Clark is the ultimate creep who is like spying on her.
Yeah.
But then it immediately cuts to Greg hiding out in her tree, looking in her window. So he's totally one-upped Clark in the creepy scale.
Totally. So during the ending of the episode 1 and the beginning of episode 2, there's this fucking bug boy in the tree. He's not a bug boy yet, but
he's like filming her in her window.
Filming her. It's this is the most disgusting episode of Smallville I've ever seen in my life. And I'm just going to warn you, for anyone listening that maybe hasn't seen the entire series, this episode is the most disgusting thing. There is a shower scene of Greg in the shower, like just peeling off all of his skin.
Oh yeah, he looks like Freddy Krueger.
It's sick.
Yeah, it's the most
Not
one of the
sick in a
most
good way.
X-Files-y episodes we've seen.
Back to the drama stuff. So yeah, Clark. So there's Clark like protecting Lana, and then there's Lex Luthor, who, okay, his whole thing is he is trying to kind of make up for Clark saving him by like getting into. He knows that Clark wants Lana, so he is like injecting himself into all these like teenage happenings to try to pull some strings in favor of Clark to get Lana. But he ends up making himself look like a total creep too.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I can see your taste in women or something like that, right?
Right.
And she's like 15 in this show,
supposedly,
and he's like in his 20s or something. It's just like, it's really, really creepy.
It's so creepy, and for some reason Lana is just like rolling with everything.
Well, thankfully the show gets like less male gazy, creepy
as time goes on.
Yeah,
but we're also like in this pre-CW era, so like it makes sense that like this show kind of paved the way to to those shows like OC and whatever.
Right.
So there you go. So there you so Lex, but he also is like eyeing Lana. You can kind of tell. So you got Greg, the bug boy, you got Clark, and you got Lex all like eyeing Lana.
Yeah.
And she's just like this innocent, like I'm just whatever, whatever. Like it's like these three guys are just the whole episode itself is just revolving around her in this weird way.
Yeah. And I don't get it though, because I don't know if you've seen like True Blood or whatever, but like Sookie Stackhouse, all these like all the vampires and
they all
werewolves and
lust
humans,
after
like
her, yeah.
Like she's like the least compelling character to watch on that show.
She kind of like that character. She holds her own, and so does Lana in some respect. But Lana, the thing about her is that you could tell that she like, at least with Sookie in True Blood, you could tell that she didn't want some of those men. And with Lana, you kind of feel like she's just like, oh yeah, I'm down with all of you.
I'm like, oh, you like me.
But she has a boyfriend, Whitney, who in this episode is running around like trying to get her necklace back from Clark from the last episode when they like scarecrowed him.
Right.
The drama in this episode is
scarecrowed. I like that.
He got scarecrowed.
Thing.
The drama in this episode is just it's not like, I don't know, it's not as intense as it gets later, but it's setting up what's going to happen. Like you get a good vibe of the drama.
Yeah.
Moving forward. So that's the drama. Let's move into the drinking game.
Okay.
Now, again, we have a set of drinking game rules. Anytime someone does something, drink. I'm going to read off the rules, and I'm going to have Jason go ahead and reiterate, or not reiterate. I'm going to have him tell me if there are any drinks to be had when these things happened. Jason, were there any hospital scenes?
0.
No hospital scenes. Okay.
No. Even though people definitely got injured.
Did anyone say the word son or father?
No.
Wow.
Surprising. So
oh my God.
Yeah.
So the beginning of this show, the first at least 2 episodes, you're not getting too drunk here.
I'm going to say that has something to do with the writers apologizing for it being like the least Smallville episode, because this one isn't as formulaic as the other ones, I'll say.
Right, yeah.
Or we're just fucking up with this drinking game. But I think that's the case.
And I think the episode that's coming next is where you really start seeing Smallville starts, you can see the shape of it. You can see where it's headed.
This one, unlike the last episode, because there are so many tropes that they set up in that first episode, this one I definitely say is a shots episode.
This is a shots one, for sure. Don't take a swig of beer.
Right.
Don't take a drink of wine. Take shots, because it's very limited in this one.
Yeah, the other one you would have blacked out a quarter through the episode.
Right, exactly. Does Chloe cry in this episode?
She does not.
No crying Chloe.
It's coming, though.
It's headed this way. Shirtless Clark. Did he rip off his shirt at any point, or was he not wearing any shirt?
No.
I
don't think
today.
that was a thing.
All right. Glass shattering. Did that happen?
One time.
Okay.
That happened when the truck flipped, right?
When Whitney was driving.
Yeah, when Whitney's driving, his truck blew up and Clark saved him. That counts. Glass shattered. It flipped. Glass was going everywhere.
So that's a 1. Is that just a 1 on the glass shattering?
Singular. Yes.
Okay, cool. Any foreshadowing? Did that happen today?
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
So the first one was him talking about the freaks. And like he was talking about the wall of weird. And I think that sets up.
It's setting it up for the
later.
What's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second one had to do with, I would say, the kryptonite.
Right.
Because that is such a huge thing. And like and it sets up like the lead, like Superman being immune to the effects of lead.
Right. He can't see through it.
Kryptonite radiation can't go through it, which ends up saving him.
Right. So lead is a big thing, and then we'll get to that in the geek segment.
Yeah, totally. I would say that counts as foreshadowing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Word. And then foreshadowing. Is there? Or sorry, we just did that. Are there any Luthor cocktails?
Luthor cocktails? No.
No. There's not very much Luthor action.
No, he's pretty sober in this.
There's
one.
no Lionel in this episode. That's surprising. does Clark lie at all in this episode?
Not that I can tell.
Okay. Does Clark brood at all?
Oh yeah, he does. There's this whole conversation with his father in the barn. He's actively brooding while he's having a conversation. Definitely counts.
Definitely counts. All right, so that's a shot right there. Does Lana bring up her parents?
She does not.
She does not do that. All right, so anyone say the word abilities?
Not in this one.
Not yet. We're still setting the stage here. We're on episode 2. Does Clark show up out of nowhere?
He does.
Of course he does.
Yeah. So one time, at least 2, which is a grand total of 5 or 6
Whoa.
shots, which I think is pretty
In this
good.
episode?
In this episode.
Holy shit.
But he could have shown up a second time depending on how you looked at it.
Okay.
Because it did set up for the viewer that he was going somewhere specific,
Yeah.
even though to the people on the scene, he was showing up out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Exactly.
But yeah, when you don't, I think when you don't give the viewers context for when he's going to show up, then it's definitely out of nowhere.
It's out of nowhere. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, you're going to be moderately buzzed at the end of this episode, but you know, maybe this is a good episode to watch right into the next one, you know, double it up. If you're trying to get drunk tonight, fucking watch the next episode too. I'm sure it will all add up. Let's go to the next segment, which is the Geek Lore segment. And Jason is going to spearhead this one. Let's talk about some of the things in this episode that really tie into the Superman mythology.
Okay, so we were just speaking about lead.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
That's a huge
Lead.
thing. That's so prominent. I don't know if there was ever a version of Superman that didn't have it, so he couldn't use his X-ray vision through lead, or that kryptonite couldn't get through him. You know, like.
Well, for
It's
me,
a
when
huge thing.
I was a really young, I mean, like when I saw the Superman Richard Donner film, that was when I really got the lead thing. It wasn't from the comics; it was from the movie.
Right.
But you're saying that it does go back to the comics. It's not something they made up in the Donner films.
Yeah, and I think that lead as like a metal that people use and was common is such an old school thing. Like,
Yeah.
of course, it would be lead. Back in the 1940s,
Right.
or whatever, when it was really at its height. So we see it twice. One, Lex keeps Lana's necklace, kryptonite necklace,
Mm-hmm.
in a lead case
Okay.
that was apparently formed or forged from some armor of some saint, right?
Right.
And then, as I was saying before, it also saves Clark's life once when he discovers that kryptonite radiation can't affect him, and he was behind like a big metal casing or a lead casing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely something. Like the whole thing with lead is it's kind of his savior in a way.
Right.
He's a lot of times he's trying to be human in some aspects, and lead can help him do that without being able to see through everything. But also, it helps him in the sense that his weakness, kryptonite, will not affect him because of it if it's in the way.
Yeah. And as far as things like lore from the comics or like previous iterations of Superman, I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
Unless, I'm missing some bug boy.
No, some bug boy lead bugs or
Yeah.
whatever. All right. So how about the crew spotlight? That's our final segment for the show. Let's dive into that.
So this one, one thing I should mention for lore, right, is Clark basically has a wet dream.
Oh shit!
And that sort of
I forgot.
foreshadows his flying
His
ability.
flying stuff. So okay,
Because
so-
eventually he learns to fly, but not for a very long time.
right. He has this moment where he's dreaming about flying above Lana's bed, which is extremely creepy. If it was real, but it was a dream, so it's a pass. But also in the episode, he's like floating in the street, right?
I don't think so. No.
Wait. Also in the episode, he talks to his dad about flight.
Does he?
Yeah, and Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, that's
Jonathan is just like, well, we don't know about that. That's going to be a whole new world once you start flying around.
Uncharted
and-
territory. Except
Uncharted
the fact that like his like son that he finds in a field like can lift a fucking car to save their lives.
Which may, yeah, so
that's not uncharted
it's not,
territory.
yeah, no. It's just flying. That's the only thing that's weird, according to Jonathan Kent.
So I don't know if I was backtracking, but moving on
But yeah,
to the crew
doing,
spotlight.
Yeah, crew spotlight. Here we go. Let's see what we got on the crew spotlight. Do it.
My 3 picks for
Ah.
this one. So the directors, which I think it's interesting, this episode had dual directors. I don't know if there was like a first and a second unit, but Philip Srichia, I think is how you pronounce his name,
Okay.
was actually, he's done a ton of modern shows, but had also directed episodes of Lois and Clark, which is pretty interesting, right? That's
Well,
kinda
I mean,
weird.
it ties in with the Superman mythology on television.
Right. And I'd say that the tone of this episode is very much unlike any Lois and
A
Clark
Lois and
episode.
Clark level. Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting that they would get that guy. Did he was? Do you think it was Lois and Clark that impressed the producers of the show to get him on board, or was it other stuff? Did he do something else that maybe like since then?
I'm sure there's like a bit of nostalgia on
Lois and Clark.
on Lois and Clark, yeah, and they're just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we got some director from this, as they were going through like their list of
Right.
directorial candidates or whatever.
Interesting.
And then there was the other one, Michael Watkins, who had more recently done, I mean, he's also done a ton of genre stuff, but more recently had done Blacklist, which is one of the shows I'm really into, with James Spader.
Pretty heavy. I mean, like that show is like up top.
Right. I don't know if that falls like in his career, or as like the rise and fall of his career, if this is like the latter half, but maybe we can see that like Smallville was his start, to get his chops, as we've seen with a lot of actors and directors and stuff.
Exactly.
For the show.
Yeah.
And I was going to save this for a later episode, and you'll see his name throughout at least the first few seasons of it, but Mark Verheiden, who is an executive producer on this episode, and I'm sure like many more, and was also like one of my favorite comic book writers. The first time I like got to know that name was he did the first series of the Aliens Dark Horse comic that takes place directly after Aliens the movie. Then he's done like Battlestar Galactica and Caprica. He wrote The Mask with Jim Carrey. Yeah. Super fucking weird, right? He wrote episodes of Heroes, more recently on Netflix, Hemlock Grove. Episodes of Constantine. It's crazy how much shit this guy's done.
I gotta say, Greg the Bug Boy does some like pretty intense mask faces in this show. In this episode,
totally. He's a very animated. Actor.
He's. I can imagine if they made his face green, it would just be like so masky.
Yeah. So maybe there was some of that influence in this guy, even though he was just in a producer role.
Right.
But I think he definitely has a lot of creative control and direction. He's like
Totally.
one of my favorite industry peeps for sure.
He's a classic peep. Cool. Well, I mean, I'm sure we're gonna revisit him, his involvement with the show moving forward. Do you have anybody else on the crew spotlight?
That's it for now. I think
that's it for now.
3 is pretty good.
Cool. All right. Well, let's dive into the next episode. Thank you for joining us again. We are the Smallville Freaks. Emphasis on freaks. Freak of the week. You get it. I am Mike Pelly. Jason Lamb. Jason Lamb, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me Jason_Lamb on Twitter.
Twitter. Cool. You can find me at Mike Pelly on Twitter as well. No underscore. I don't need it. I'm good on the underscore.
I guess there was another Jason Lamb at the time.
Yeah, there was. Actually, I was just watching a documentary on the Raiders of the Lost Ark that was remade by kids in the 80s, and like the guy
sweeted.
What?
It got sweeted, right?
Well, one of the kids that like filmed it was named Jason Lamb.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it's totally.
Soup's
you should check it out. So subscribe to the Hard to Find Media YouTube channel. You can find it at youtube.com/Hard to Find Media Network. And we will be back with the next episode entitled Hothead. Super excited to get into it. Adios, y'all.
Laters.
This has been a podcast presented by
Hard to find media.
Subscribe to Hard to Find Media on youtube.com/Hard to Find Media Network. This shit is free. Share it. Blast it. Fuck it.